correspondent. Jake Wallace Simmons, Simons, I get it wrong every time, take my apologies, joins me. Telegraph columnist. You know some blind spots you have with names? I've got one with yours.
All the time. Don't worry.
Telegraph columnist and author of Never Again, How the West Betrayed the Jews and Itself, if people want to take a look at that. Jake, I was conscious this morning listening to Keir Starmer's words of sympathy, words of horror, Wes Streeting echoing it and offering practical solidarity, to use the term that he did about the ambulances. Is it enough?
It feels really like too little too late to a lot of Jewish people. We've had the Manchester stabbings at the Manchester Synagogue just a few months ago. At that time, David Lammy went up to see the community there who were in mourning and was heckled. And I think that the community feels the same way now. We've had 3 years of incitement against Jews and against Israel on our streets in London, week after week. Even now there's been a ceasefire in Gaza for the last few months. Still, Gaza-related activity and activism is taking place in the most grotesque anti-Semitic terms a lot of the time. And the Prime Minister and his government has done woefully little to stamp it out, to stand against it. They have not stood up against the anti-Israel lies and propaganda that have been infesting our screens, both legacy media and social media. And indeed, just before the Manchester stabbings, he recognised a state of Palestine which had Hamas congratulating him. And so I think Jews have felt bruised for a long time about the treatment they've received from this government. And right now, the solidarity, although it's very welcome, of course, those ambulances are being replaced, and that's wonderful. It does feel like it's got a rather bitter taste in the mouth.
What is it, do you think, behind not just Keir Starmer, but other examples that I know you've spoken about at length over the last couple of years, and I'm sure before? Is it weakness? Is it cowardice? Is it ignorance? Is it a failure to understand the implications for the day-to-day lives of Jewish people in Britain?
I think it's all of those things together, really. I think really we haven't woken up because the principles of liberalism wish us to treat everybody with equality, everybody with tolerance, everybody with a general, good disposition, and trusting minorities to rub on alongside the rest of us and make the most of life in Britain. Unfortunately, there is a small number of Islamist jihadis or jihadi-related groups and people who are very determined to use our freedoms against us, to use the liberties of our political system, of our legal system, and our freedoms of assembly on the streets to actually subvert and overturn the principles of our democracy, in particular inserting anti-Semitism into the public square. And I think that we've been very slow to react against that, to defend our liberties against those who seek to use our liberties against us. Karl Popper famously said that if you tolerate the intolerant, then very soon tolerance will be done away with, and the tolerant with them. And we're really at that point, I think, today. I think
what's been clear since October the 7th, I would argue and have argued here on the programme, is that a lot of people who say what I regard as incorrect things at the very least, sometimes loathsome things at worst, aren't always in the groups that you've described there. They're not necessarily jihadis, they're not necessarily Islamist-facing or Islamist-motivated, but there's a great deal of, I think, ignorance and misunderstanding about that whole picture that you have set out, and that a lot of people are being brought into a much more sinister net without realising that they are. Do you see that happening?
I think that's a very astute observation, because you've got the Islamist jihadis, the radicals there, of course. You've also got leftist radicals, whether they're on our universities, on our streets, on the back benches, all of them pushing basically what I would say would be lies about Israel, that it's committing a genocide rather than a war, that it's an ethno state, that it's an apartheid state, all these awful slurs, the worst ideas in modern Britain, that it's racist and white supremacist, are all thrown at Israel, even though Israel isn't a white state, let alone anything else. And the propagation of these lies have been supported by footage of horrendous suffering in Gaza, but that's the result of a war Israel has been at war with.
And you and I and anybody else can discuss how we think that war has been waged and conducted, can't we? On both
of
sides.
course. No country is perfect. No country is immune from criticism, but a lot of the criticism directed at Israel seems to be based on falsehoods. And like you say, that tends to, when the falsehoods, when it reaches a certain critical mass, then well-meaning people become convinced that Israel actually is the evil Nazi state that these hard left activists and jihadis are putting about. And therefore they stand up with their conscience and think, okay, I'm standing against evil. And throughout history, anti-Semites have never felt that they're the bad guys. They've always felt, well, it's just that Jews are evil. And that's why I'm, as a good person, standing up against that devil and that evil. And that's what's becoming very widespread again today.
I was writing over the weekend about the public prayer row. We needn't rerun it, but I was writing about that, and I was the whole time I was thinking about a number of different people I know and groups that I'm aware of, but certainly people I know personally who have different faith to me or no faith at all. And I was thinking, how do you get to the point where you think Jewish person equals Israeli pro-Netanyahu person? Just to use one example, Muslim person equals jihadi. Because that's the point a huge number of people in our country have got to. They look at one another and they see the very worst iterations in their mind of a person like them and decide that they can heap all their antipathy and frustration about that group onto that individual. And that's really dangerous territory to be in, isn't it, as a nation?
I think there's a lot of truth in that. I don't think I would equate Netanyahu and the Israeli government with jihadism in any way. But
you see what I mean? I'm talking about what people decide are their worst iteration in their mind, and they equate an individual in the street. I'm getting really to the point of Jewish people and Muslim people, but let's just focus on Jewish people today, being safe in Britain and feeling like Britain is a place for them. And increasing numbers of Jewish people don't feel Britain is a place for them.
That's right. I think it's definitely true for Muslims, as you've said. Historically, tens of thousands of Muslims died for our country in both world wars. We mustn't forget that. At the same token, from a Jewish point of view, the nature of anti-Semitism, as I've said, is it's founded on a lie that makes out as if Jews are satanic, Jews are the devil, Jews are baby killers.
alone is a blood libel that's been around since 1144 when it's
invented in Norwich, and today has been articulated again that Israel somehow loves and relishes killing babies. It's based on a lie. Jews are supernaturally bad, pull all the strings of power, and have a bloodlust. And when people become convinced of that again, our muscle memory is long. It goes back hundreds of years. It feels natural to us in some ways, and then it means that you feel like you're just being a good person by standing up against the Jews, and that's a very dangerous place to be in.
It is, and I saw over the weekend, I'm sure you did as well, Zoe Strimple, the writer, talking about an art exhibition she'd been to in Margate, and I saw the pictures, some of the pictures that she had taken photographs of and shown us, and she got into a bit of a ding-dong with people there. She then reported back on social media that the police had said to her, sorry, none of this falls into a problematic category, it's just an expression of antipathy towards the state of Israel. And you only had to look at those pictures to know it was way more than that. Is there a problem with people understanding the difference between those two things? I could criticise all kinds of things about Israel. Israelis criticise all kinds of things about Israel. But that, to me, was... I mean, if people haven't seen the pictures, I mean, they are, to my eyes, and I may be put right on this, but to my eyes, they are a really ugly, obvious expression of anti-Semitism on the walls of an art gallery, and the police were telling Zoe, sorry, nothing to see here.
Yeah, I mean, there's a very thin disguise for anti-Semitism these days, which is you can depict Jews with all the ancient anti-Semitic tropes that have been used for millennia, let alone centuries. Again, Jews, enjoying killing and eating babies, reveling in death, controlling the world powers, controlling the money markets, and so on. You can articulate all of those, but as long as you make the sleight of hand by saying that it's not Jews, it's only Israel, you can get away with the whole lot of it. In the Middle Ages,
how do you fix that? How do you rectify that?
I think people need to start realizing that Israel is not this demonic force that it's been depicted by the anti-Semites. Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East. Like all democracies, it is flawed. It is at war. Wars are gruesome and horrible. But it is a liberal democracy that respects the rights of women, gay people. It's the only pride march in the whole Middle East you'll find in Tel Aviv, and a very, very vibrant one it is too. It's the only place that respects the rule of law, freedom of assembly, and freedom of speech. Of course, it's got dark sides. Show me a country that doesn't. People need to understand that is the real country of Israel, with its lights and its dark. It's a real place, like every other liberal democracy, not this place of the fantasy sort of demon place of the Nazi and anti-Semitic imagination. And once you get that bit sorted, then all the hatred begins to become very clear of what's motivated. It's sheer bigotry and anti-Semitism, because you can criticise it in an ordinary and reasonable fashion.
So from the government, from police, from institutions like universities and art gallery owners, you name it, what do you need? What more do you need? What more do we need, we in the country, for this to be better understood and stamped out?
I think people need to just realise which side we need to be on. There's nothing more symbolic than the fact that ambulances were attacked. Ambulances are there to save people's lives, not just Jewish people. They serve the entire community. Ambulances are an expression of the sanctity and respect for life, attacked by people who fetishise and worship death. It's as simple and as clear as that.
I know we're not at war here, but I can hear people saying to me, and ringing and saying it, ambulances were shot at in Gaza.
Ambulances were shot at in Gaza because they were being used by terrorists as cover. I mean, it's as simple as that. Israel didn't attack ambulances for any gratuitous, bloodthirsty, murderous reason. It's because the terrorists are using it to transport their arms and their fighters, placing Israel in a difficult position as a respecter of human rights. This is the reality. But when you have a look, this attack in London is not in Israel, it's here on our home turf. It couldn't be clearer. The Jews love life. Jews in Britain love life. They love our country. They're very patriotic. They fought and died in the war for our country. Attack on them should be an attack on us all. There should be no question to be on the side of the Jews, not the jihadis. And yet it seems that there's a lot of equivocation as a result of the weight of propaganda that's been in the air over the past few years. You've got to say enough is enough. There's a right and a wrong in this, and the jihadis are on the wrong side. We have to stand against.
And some of that equivocation is in Parliament?
A lot of that equivocation is in Parliament, particularly on the backbenches, regrettably.
OK, thank you very much indeed, Jake Wallace Simmons, for joining me today, Telegraph columnist. And Steve has called from Hampstead with her view. Hello, Emma.
Hi. Sorry, I got so infuriated when I heard that guy, Jake Wallace, who is just talking complete propaganda and lies, Cleated. I'm a Jewish woman in North London. It's terrible what's happening in Golders Green. Of course, any kind of racism is horrendous, but people keep forgetting. When you said there's a ceasefire at the moment, there's not a ceasefire. They're killing and bombing. Everyone's starving. There's no water going into Gaza. There's no medical aid going into Gaza. And the biggest anti-Semite in the world is Netanyahu. He has made it so dangerous for all of us. I've lived in London all my life. I mean, there's always a bit of anti-Semitism because everybody sort of hates Jews. We're all used to that, it's fine. But like this kind of anti-Semitism, not because of what they did on October 7th, because of what's led up to it. And everyone's just in denial. That guy just now, that cabbie, talking about Israel. That's insane.
But hang on, Emma. I promise I'm going to let you speak again in a sec. Just because you don't see Israel or Netanyahu's actions the same way that they do, it doesn't mean one is a propagandist and the other is whatever you said that my last caller was. They don't see it like you, and that's fine. I'm keen to hear how you see it, but you don't have to denigrate other people who see it differently. You know what I mean?
Well, I don't know, you see, because we're talking about denial. There is no ceasefire at the moment. What happened is they got the hostages back, thank God, which is great. I know loads of people didn't make it back.
But Emma,
And
it
then
is
they
materially
carried on
different. It is. You're absolutely right to say that there's still military activity
Right.
from Hamas as well as from Israel. Of course you're right, and of course you're right to say that the aid situation is far from complete and far from perfect.
Right.
But it isn't. It isn't true to say zero aid is getting in, because there is. You know, some kids have gone back to school, are enjoying theatre. I've seen it with my own eyes. Are enjoying theatre groups. Are enjoying the attempt to have a normal life. Yes, in Gaza. Yes, I am. After the horrors of what they've been through.
In Gaza and the West Bank?
No, I don't. I'm just saying. It's not that the picture you're describing is not the totality, and that's all I'm trying to do. I've given a commitment on this programme today to address the West Bank later in the week, which I will do, because it's horrific what's going on there.
What I'm saying is that people are not realising the reason we're having high extreme anti-Semitism in this country is because Keir Starmer, I know he's got his hands tied with Trump and with Netanyahu, but because we're helping out with Iran and we've been helping out in all kinds of ways with arms whilst the Gaza stuff is going on, that's why. And what's difficult is people don't see there's a difference between just Jewish people who've been in England. Some people have never even been to Israel. My family came straight here in 1904. Israel didn't even exist at that point.
But Emma, if I attack a Jewish person in Britain or a Jewish interest like an ambulance or a synagogue in Britain because I loathe what Netanyahu has done, that doesn't take away from the fact that I'm being an anti-Semite while I do it. It just doesn't. Yeah, you could 100% take apart what Netanyahu is doing. Anyone can. But none of that justifies the kinds of attacks we've seen, big and small, so to speak, on Jews in this country or indeed around the world, because this has become a global phenomenon of Jew hatred. And dissembling about what's happening where just doesn't help any of us, and attacking people for having a different view doesn't help any of us, all of us. But thank you, Emma, for your call. I don't doubt your sincerity of concern at all for the people of Gaza and elsewhere around the world. Can I just say, in case any of you are offended by